All right. We're live, brothers.
All right. Good evening, and welcome to tonight's episode of the Prince Hall Think Tank, which is a monthly show where we talk about various topics relating to Prince Hall Masonry. My name is Dave Gillarm. I'm your host for the night. I'm a past master of Mount Pisgah Lodge number 53, located in Columbus, Georgia, where Cornelius Wilson serves as our worshipful master. I also have the pleasure of serving as the worshipful grand historian of the most worshipful Prince Hall Grand Lodge of Georgia, where the Honorable Bruce A. James has just been reelected to serve as our Grand Master. Um, the views and opinions that are expressed by us tonight in no way reflect the views and opinions of the Grand Lodge in which we hold membership. All right, now I'm going to pass it on to Brother James Morgan, where he introduced himself.
Good evening, everybody. First of all, let me say a happy St. John's Day weekend to all the Master Masons out there, as well as a happy 300th anniversary of organized Freemasonry to all Master Masons throughout the world. My name is James R. Morgan III. I am a past master of Corinthian Lodge number 18 here in the nation's capital of Washington, D.C., where Worshipful Master Leroy G. McDonald II is currently presiding, and I have the pleasure and honor of serving as the Worshipful Associate Grand Historian for the Most Worshipful Prince Hall Grand Lodge of District of Columbia, where the Honorable Philip David is our 85th Most Worshipful Grand Master, and that is such an honor to be here once again on the Prince Hall Think Tank. Thank you all for joining us. I'm going to throw it over to Brother Curtis Black down in the dirty.
Thank you, Brother Morgan. My name is Brother Curtis Black. I am past master of James E. Carter Lodge number 157, beholden to the most worshipful Prince Hall Grand Lodge of the state of Texas and its jurisdiction, where the Honorable Wilbur M. Curtis currently presides as our most worshipful Grand Master. And Brother Cedric Cook, our newly elected worshipful master, presently presides over our lodge. It is a pleasure to be back. I've had some things that I've had to take care of that have kept me off a couple of episodes, but it's a good thing to be back. I hope you all enjoyed the show, and I hope you can take something from it. That we actually discuss here, and just like Brother Gillarm said, these views are not the views of our Grand Lodge. These views things that we have researched, of our years of researching and things like that. So, without further ado, I guess we'll go ahead and get on to the show.
All right, thank you for that, Brother Black. Brother Ken Collins cannot be with us at the moment. He'll probably be chiming in a little later on. Tonight's show is probably one of our most requested and definitely controversial topics, where we talk about the history of the National Grand Lodge. After further discussion about further discussion, we decided that there's too much information um, with regarding the National Grand Lodge to just have one particular show dedicated to it. We're talking about an organization with some serious history, and there were a lot of moving parts to it. So what we decided is that we were actually going to look at having a trilogy series. So this National Grand Lodge topic will be separated into three separate shows. The next show will probably be airing within the next week or two. And this one is going to be covered more of an overview, so you'll get a picture of what the National Grand Lodge was, what are the things it was doing, and who were some of the key players. Then we'll start getting into some of the issues that arose and some of the other events that happened. And on the next episode, we're going to get into more of what happened with certain conventions, such as the Delaware Convention. What were the ramifications, and what was the fallout after that convention, leading into basically present times. And for the third episode, we're looking at possibly bringing on two guests. The third episode you surely would not want to miss, provided that both of these guests will be able to be on. So that's what we're kind of going to look at in direction of this series. So without further ado, we're going to have this start off by Brother James Morgan with his presentation.
Thank you, Brother Gillon. Okay, so the National Grand Lodge, free and accepted ancient York Masons of North America. This is a topic that is one that I found has evoked a lot of emotion out of a lot of brothers throughout the country for various reasons. In my view, the National Grand Lodge is a horse of many colors, and depending on where you're from and what your who you identify with in Masonic history, it kind of shapes what color that horse is to you. To give a basic background of it before I get into my short presentation, we know that Prince Hall Freemasonry story starts in Massachusetts. It starts to migrate and radiate out to the other states nearby, going into New York. You end up going into New Jersey, Rhode Island, Connecticut, Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is really where this story really jumps off. What you have is a situation where you have two lodges that were that were expelled from what was then called the First Independent African Grand Lodge. Their names were Harmony and Union Lodges. They were expelled from the First Independent African Grand Lodge for being rebellious and not following orders, that kind of a thing. These lodges, they claimed that they had received a charter to start a Grand Lodge from the Caucasian Grand Lodge of Ohio, located at Chillicothe. Problem is, there was no Grand Lodge in Chillicothe. Not that we're not at least not a legitimate one. But be that as it may, they proceeded to start what was known as the Hiram Grand Lodge. Hiram Grand Lodge and First Independent African Grand Lodge went back and forth for a number of years, not only in the press, but also in terms of organizing lodges. And as a matter of fact, of the three, or really four lodges that helped establish the Prince Hall Grand Lodge of DC, where my membership is, three of those original four, and I got to put an asterisk there because Hiram 4 wasn't official just yet, but the majority of the lodges that were in my area were actually under the Hiram Grand Lodge, which we would call a clandestine body, meaning it didn't have Masonic authority. And so what happened was that in June of 1847, John T. Hilton, who was the head of the brothers in Massachusetts, he called together a meeting. And in calling this meeting together of brothers, he invited all of the descendants or the children of African Lodge 459, both legitimate and illegitimate. And this is where you start to see some issues, because depending on which book you read and who wrote it and what have you, you get differing stories about what actually occurred and who actually came and what was the purpose of this meeting. But to sum it up, this meeting was supposed to be to try to get all of the different African American Masonic interests on one accord. What that meant, we're not really sure what the original intent was. However, what did occur was that the birth of the organization known as the National Grand Lodge. This body was created with the intent of being a center of union. The only problem is when we use some terms like that, they mean different things to different people. Okay, and so what you have is a situation where you have a national body which is now supposed to govern the affairs of individual state grand lodges. Okay, now in Masonic jurisprudence, this is not necessarily how a Grand Lodge is supposed to operate, because we know that a Grand Lodge is supposed to be sovereign in its own right. And this is where the issue occurs, because over time, the many of the individual, what they call state Grand Lodges, end up saying, hey, that's not how Freemasonry is supposed to work. We're sovereign. We're our own individual organizations. We do not report to you. And from that basic argument, I've oversimplified it tremendously, but from that basic argument, you have what becomes almost a civil war within the African American Masonic world. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you just very briefly some profiles of some individuals who I find very interesting, who were some key players at this time. So let me see. I'm going to go to screen share, and what we're going to do is we're going to go right here. Can y'all see that? Hello? Can y'all see it?
Yeah.
Okay, good. All right, good. So normally I try to come up with a snazzy name for these presentations, but tonight I just kept it very simple. We're going to talk about some of the national grand masters who were the heads of this organization, and to kind of get a feel for who these individuals were and what were their different interests. The first individual I want to discuss is Paul Drayton. Paul Drayton served as the Grand Master for brothers in the state of New York, the Big Apple. Very, very popular brother with the brothers in New York, I might say. However, his personal background was very interesting. The traditional history that we have found thus far is that he actually was the biracial son of a slave owner and his mother having been formerly enslaved. Paul Drayton, if you look at him, he does not necessarily look like somebody from Ghana or Nigeria. Okay, so you can kind of see those features there. And I've actually been researching his family background and gotten in touch with the Caucasian Drayton family and showed this picture. And the reaction was, oh my God, I can see he's a Drayton because look at that forehead. That was their words, not mine. but be that as it may, traditionally, he was believed to have been initiated into Freemasonry actually in a white lodge in the South. Upon them discovering his racial background, he was apparently run out of the South. He comes to New York and ascends the heights of Freemasonry in New York among blacks very quickly. He actually organized lodges back in the Carolinas again as he traveled south. He worked as a tailor as well. And he is one of the national grandmasters from the early period who was what I would say would be universally accepted at that time as being the national grandmaster for those who were in what we call the National Grand Lodge or the National Compact. He actually served as the national grandmaster from 1862 to 1865, and he served at a period which is obviously very important because that's basically during the Civil War. Okay, and so you also have a dynamic where the brothers of that day saw that in unity there could be strength. So unfortunately, this unity was not to last. However, there was a period, and I think people often forget this, there was a period with the National Grand Lodge where it was somewhat unified. You did have problems. You had cracks in the foundation. I'll give you that. But there was a period where peace and harmony in general prevailed. And I use general very broadly. So please don't beat me up for that, because I know there's somebody out there who's cringing their teeth. The next person I'd like to discuss very briefly is Richard Howell Gleaves. Now, Gleaves, a lot of the issues that you find with the National Grand Lodge, the major issues that it starts having with the individual state Grand Lodges, actually occurred during Gleaves' administration. I'll give you some basic background on him. He was born July 4th, 1819. Again, he's of mixed race parentage. He was educated in both the cities of Philadelphia, where he was born, as well as in New Orleans. And Gleaves actually ends up making a career for a time as the lieutenant governor of South Carolina. He goes into politics. He served as Grand Master in Ohio as well. Worked with the Freedmen's Bureau. Gleaves was a very, very interesting man, and I guess in this day and time we would call him a carpetbagger. In the post-Civil War years. But many of the issues that occur with the National Grand Lodge in terms of the expansion of the National Grand Master and the National Grand Lodge's authority take place. Gleaves, ironically, one thing that Gleaves did when he was under his administration was they started trying to regulate where lodges could be placed, and saying to individual state grand lodges that, hey, before you put a lodge somewhere, you have to ask and seek permission of the National Grand Lodge or the National Grand Master or National Grand Master. Ironically, this seems to have been done to try to stop the jurisdiction of Ohio from becoming too big and too powerful, too influential. And this is ironic to me because Gleaves had served as Grand Master in Ohio. So you know, so a lot of this stuff gets really, very personal. And the last thing I'll say on Gleaves before I move on is that during his administration from 1865 to 1877, you saw a rapid growth in Black Masonic lodges descended from Prince Hall and African Lodge 459. And you see the growth and expansion of Grand Lodges all throughout the South, Georgia, Alabama, Texas has started during his administration. You get Grand Lodges in Kansas and Missouri during this time period. And so Gleaves is faced with trying to govern these different things happening. But I think that unfortunately for him and his administration, he actually just did not have the strength and the power of personality to keep that united front of having a National Grand Lodge. And there were also other Grand Lodges out there known as the Eastern Alliance who were kind of fighting against this National Grand Lodge structure. Last thing I'll say on Richard Howell Gleaves is that he ended up eventually leaving the National Compact as well. And he finished his Masonic career and indeed his life here in Washington, D.C., eventually becoming a member of Eureka Lodge number 5 here in Washington, D.C. And he also became our CCFC, the head of our CCFC committee here in D.C., which I happen to be a member of now. So that's one thing me and him have in common. We served on the same committee. Next, this person here now is a very, very, very controversial. Unlike the two previous National Grand Masters that we have discussed, Drayton and Gleaves, those first two were universally accepted. George LaVere is not necessarily universally accepted as such. However, he did claim this title. LaVere was a Mason whose Masonic career was based in Tennessee. And many of the issues that we have today with the National Grand Lodge, or what's known as Prince Hall origin, in terms of their legitimacy and what have you, starts right here with him. LaVere served as National Grand Secretary. He eventually is elected as National Grand Master at a very controversial meeting of the National Grand Lodge in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And he really, to me, was kind of a placeholder between the period where the National Grand Lodge and National Grand Master were an accepted practice and the period which we're getting into now, which is the period where it becomes more of an antagonistic organization. And there's much debate about, well, did the National Grand Lodge cease to exist, cease to meet, or did it continue? All of that is right here with this man, George LaVere, who's also a minister and a Civil War veteran himself. And I want to thank Brother Darrell Hodge for providing me with this photograph of him, which was very rare, but thank you, Brother Hodge. Last but not least, I'm going to mention Brother Dave Gillam's most favorite National Grand Master in the entire world, Captain William D. Matthews, originally from Maryland's Eastern Shore. I actually have some research that's being published as we speak on him and his life. But he became the Grand Master of King Solomon Grand Lodge of Kansas. He was a Masonic, he really was a Masonic pioneer, in my opinion, for Blacks in the western part of the country. But he takes over as the National Grand Master in the late 1800s, after following George LaVere. And this is when you start really seeing the aggressiveness of the National Grand Lodge in fighting those state Grand Lodges that had left it. Matthews is probably most famous for issuing his manifesto, which we're going to talk about a little later, where he basically demands all Grand Lodges return to the National Grand Lodge, or he would empower Grand Lodges and Grand Masters to replace them in the various states. And he expels all of the what are now known as PHA Grand Lodges. The ones that existed at that time. He expelled all of them from the National Grand Lodge, which many of them didn't really care about. But that's what he did, and he decides that he's going to replace those Grand Lodges that the National Grand Lodge lost. And this is definitely a point of high contention, which we will talk about a little later. So with that being said, I'm going to stop. I'm going to come back over here, and we're back. You guys can't see my screen anymore, right?
Right. We got you.
All right, good. So in a nutshell, those are the four national grandmasters I chose to talk about. There were several more, both that were acknowledged and unacknowledged universally. However, let's remember these were all human beings, and the problem with any organization is that it's made up of people. So with that said, I will turn it over to the next brother on the set.
All right, thank you for that, Brother Morgan. Before I go into mine, the issue once we start looking at the National Grand Lodge, you had a lot of influential people, and as Brother Morgan stated, under Gleaves you saw a vast expansion, and in just my own personal research, it seemed like Grand Lodges that were in union with the National Grand Lodge were a lot stronger or had a lot more influential members than the Grand Lodges that were part of the Eastern Alliance or the independent Grand Lodges. Why that came to be, I really don't know, but it definitely seems as such. Take an example of the case in Georgia. Our Grand Lodge that was formed in 1870 was in union with the National Grand Lodge. And this would have some of the most influential members in Georgia during the time. You're talking about James Sims, John DeVoe, Lewis Toomer, Horace King.
So you mean to tell me, so Brother Gillum, you mean to tell me that there were multiple Grand Lodges at the time?
Exactly. There were. You had the independent Grand Lodges in Georgia. One of those lodges was chartered by the Hiram Grand Lodge of Pennsylvania, which you mentioned earlier. The first Grand Master was Joseph Robert Love, who on the previous episode we talked about Florida, he was Grand Master there as well. The independent Grand Lodge of Georgia did have some notable members, but they were nowhere near on the same level as the Grand Lodge that was formed in 1870. The other issue is that you have when you're researching the National Grand Lodge, you have some Grand Lodges or some PHA Grand Lodges that never acknowledge or never included their ties to the National Grand Lodge. You have some that they simply just didn't know, and you have others that, for lack of better words, they just added alternative facts when it comes to their involvement with it. And my Grand Lodge at one point was guilty of doing the same thing. We had a Grand Master, one of my favorite Grand Masters, other than Captain Matthews with his huge head, was past Grand Master John Wesley Dobbs. He stated that our Grand Lodge never accepted a from the national on 20. So you have stuff like that causes issues when you're doing research and providing or trying to provide factual information regarding what the National Grand Lodge is and what and all the stuff that transpired with it. So now I'm going to go ahead and get into my presentation. All right, do y'all got my screen?
Yes, sir.
All right. As Brother Morgan stated, I try to come up with something jazzy as well, and my presentation is called "The Beginning of the End." I named it this because the area that I'm going to kind of look at touching into is roughly about the 1860s to about 1878. And maybe just a slight bit beyond. All right, so we have 1847.
Brother Gillum, I'm not sure. I'm sorry to interrupt you. Can you repeat what you said? I'm not sure if it happened for everyone else, but I was getting some really bad feedback just now with you.
Okay, can you hear me clear now?
Yeah, yes, we can.
Okay. Uh, 40 with first independent African Grand Lodge North America, and Hiram Grand Lodge of Pennsylvania. So you have these three Grand Lodge with John T. Hilton as the National Grand Master. All right, and you can see here the other list of officers that were that made up the rest of the cabinet of the National Grand Lodge. In my opinion, the intent for the National Grand Lodge, or the formation of it, was honest. They wanted to unite all Masons of color. They want everybody to operate on the same sheet of music. It was, in my opinion, a very honest thing to do. Or they were trying to move forward and, you know, stop any disagreements that were having between Grand Lodges. So now we want to touch on one of the early constitutions of the National Grand Lodge, and it states, you know, what the purpose was, what the name of it was, and toward the bottom you can see where it says, "And no such most worshipful Grand Lodge can exist or exercise any Masonic privileges or duty within the United States without the sanction of the most worshipful National Grand Lodge by warrant duly granted for that purpose. All convocations or assemblies of persons calling themselves lodges of Freemasons in any of said states of either all three, or either of all of the three symbolic degrees without the sanction of the most worshipful National Grand Lodge first had or obtained are hereby declared to be spurious and clandestine and of no Masonic authority whatever." All right, even though the National Grand Lodge had this in their constitution, I have personally seen some serious contradictions. All right, for example, the brother I mentioned earlier was named Brother Horace King. I think I've mentioned him on previous shows. If you're unfamiliar with him, feel free to Google Horace King Bridge Builder, and you will find a plethora of information about this brother. Horace King first appears on the rolls of what's now the Prince Hall Grand Lodge of Ohio in the late 1860s, which was Ohio later became Independent Grand Lodge. Then he leaves there. He goes to Montgomery, where he becomes senior warden of Relief Lodge number 4. And at the time, Alabama was an Independent Grand Lodge. Then he comes to Columbus, Georgia, where he becomes the first senior warden of Bradwell Lodge number 4, which was operating under the newly formed Grand Lodge of Georgia, which had received a compact warrant. So this man that comes from an Independent Grand Lodge demits into a compact Grand Lodge, and he's never healed. There was another AME minister by the name of R.B. Bailey, who comes from Alabama as well, and demits into Bradwell Lodge. Now this lodge has all their minutes from the time, well, before they even came up with a name, pretty much until present day. And nowhere in those minutes, nor in the Grand Lodge proceedings, do you show where any member that demitted from an Independent Grand Lodge was actually healed into the Grand Lodge of Georgia, which is now the Prince Hall Grand Lodge of Georgia, which at the time was in union with the National Grand Lodge. So even though the compact had this in their constitution, it seems like they didn't really adhere to it, or maybe they were looking towards brotherly love. I don't know really what the case was, but it doesn't seem like that it applied in all cases. They clearly made exceptions when it came to certain members. So now we see the National Grand Lodge operating in usual form. It's open up, it's having its triennials. On the left, you'll see the minutes of the triennial in 1856, where you have Enos Hall as National Grand Master. And you see other brothers that were admitted, such as the National Deputy Grand Master Paul Drayton, that was previously mentioned. And on the right, you'll see you have the triennial 1862, and now with William Riley as the National Grand Master. And you have other members as the up-and-coming Richard Gleaves. And the National Grand Lodge continued on. It's continued to expand. They were starting to move into various territories. And now on the left, you have the sixth triennial, 1865. Now you have Paul Drayton, and you have Richard Gleaves there. You have James Berry out of Louisiana. So you have a lot of influential people that are part of this compact body. And in 1874, you have the triennial with Richard Gleaves as Grand Master. So you have the National Grand Lodge. They're operating as usual. Everything's moving along. By 1874, you start to have a little strife. You have Ohio, who had previously dissolved their relationship with the National Grand Lodge, so they pull out of compact. You have other Grand Lodges that are starting to pull out of the compact. You have the independent Grand Lodges that are forming, and they're starting to build up, such as Arkansas with J.C. Corbin. So they're starting to slowly become a powerhouse. And you have all this stuff happening. You have the Eureka Grand Lodge of Louisiana. They refuted the power, the quote unquote power of the National Grand Lodge. So now you have stuff happening. And then you have the National Grand Lodge trying to adjust to this. They're trying to react. They're trying to keep everything together. They're looking at unity, but basically, for lack of a better term, you have a lot of these independent Grand Lodges are starting to act up. They understand that they're powered. They understand that they were always intended to be sovereign. You have Lewis Hayden writing his letters. So you have all this stuff happening, which starts to lead into the 1874 triennial and the previous and the years after that. So 1873, you got a lot of trouble brewing. This year, 1872, just 2 years after the newly formed Grand Lodge of Georgia was in operation, they voted to dissolve the compact. At that meeting, they voted to dissolve it, and they voted to have a proxy sent to the next triennial to correction, sorry, they voted in 1872, yes, to vote for dissolving the compact. In 1873, that proxy was supposed to represent the Grand Lodge of Georgia to dissolve this compact. Some type of communication broke down. Georgia's vote didn't actually get to that triennial session, or the correct vote didn't get there. So now you see in Arkansas's proceedings, they talk about the synopsis and how 2/3 voted to dissolve the National Grand Lodge, but they conclude to remain. But what started to happen is the 6-cent tax, because the National Grand Lodge was starting to tax these state Grand Lodges, and the Grand Lodges really couldn't afford it. But then they changed their constitution, which was probably the biggest thing. And they said they no longer had any Masonic authority over any of the state Grand Lodges, and they were supposed to strictly be an advisory body, which is similar to what the current Prince Hall Grand Masters is now. So here you have, I believe the 1873 proceedings from what's now the Prince Hall Grand Lodge of Illinois, where they start going into detail about what happened at this 1873 session. So you can start seeing side by side. You have the original Constitution, which I stated, and whereas you read the second sentence, that it is hereby declared to be the highest legitimate source of Masonic authority of and over the 3 symbolic degrees of Freemasonry within its jurisdiction. Then 1874, it changes. And now it says, it is hereby declared that the respective state Grand Lodges represented in this Grand Lodge to be the highest and only legitimate source of Masonic authority over the 3 symbolic degrees of Freemasonry. So you have the National Grand Lodge itself starting to say now the state Grand Lodges are the highest authority, and all the power resides with them. So that was a big change within the National Grand Lodge. They saw the Grand Lodges were starting to pull away. They saw the independence was starting to rise. They're like, well, you know what? We're gonna try to please everybody. We're gonna change up our constitution, and maybe we can still keep this family together. But that didn't quite work out that way. So now afterwards, you still had all these the Grand Lodges continuously pulling out of the compact. You had the National Grand Masters trying to keep the stuff together, the independents trying to do their own thing, and you have the first, you have a call for a Masonic convention in Chicago, Illinois, by none other than John G. Jones. That's the same John G. Jones that's been labeled as the father of clandestine masonry. He was actually trying to bring some resolution and have the National Grand Lodge dissolved, and basically all Prince Hall Grand Lodges become in an independent status, which they currently are now. So, which brings us to the Delaware Convention. This Delaware Convention is probably one of the most researched topics, and this is something that on part 2 of this show, we're going to actually go into the resolutions, who ratified them, when it was ratified, who didn't ratify them, and some of the things that were starting to transpire when it came to this Delaware Convention. But this was a meeting between the state Grand Lodges, the independent ones, and the compact Grand Lodges. They were trying to come to some type of reconciliation. And what came out of this convention, and I have to give another shout out, the temporary chairman of this convention was John H. DeVoe, who was the Grand Master of Georgia. And what comes out of this is these resolutions. And it states now that instead of a National Grand Lodge, we're going to have a Grand Lodge Union, which is the Grand Lodge Union was supposed to function like the Council of Grand Masters. And also it states where in states where there were 2 Grand Lodges, those Grand Lodges had to merge. You had to come together as one. And 2/3 of all colored Grand Lodges in the United States had to ratify these constitutions, or had to ratify these resolutions in order for it to become in effect. And they had to do this before December 31st, 1879. So essentially, if these resolutions were not ratified, then the National Grand Lodge would technically no longer cease to exist. Well, if it was not ratified, it would continue to exist. If it was ratified, then the body erected in 1847 would no longer be in existence. So if it continued on, it would have continued on illegally. So that's what they were facing at the Delaware Convention. If you want to ratify it, or if you're not going to ratify it, if the National Grand Lodge is going to continue or not continue. But if it was ratified, the National Grand Lodge had to wind up its affairs and cease to exist. And you see item number 12 is what I stated earlier. Grand Lodges that were located in the same territorial limits as soon as possible unite and form one Grand Lodge. And this started to happen everywhere. It started to happen in Alabama. It started to happen in Florida. There were the talks in Michigan that were starting to happen about merging those 2 Grand Lodges there. This stuff started to happen all over the place because these Grand Lodges were starting to adopt these resolutions, and they wanted to bring unity among Masons of African American descent. So after this Delaware Convention, you can imagine that it was so much strife, there was so much negativity, there was so much everything. these two sides, it's like the brotherhood was split. And now after this Masonic Union platform, people were kind of joyous. They was like, yes, we know we're going to finally get this thing together. You see, one of the comments was Toomer out of Georgia. He said it's the biggest thing of the age. You got Bishop Ward, who says that he was glad to see it. And he hopes that it was being adopted by every Grand Lodge. Down to where it says, or Glee says, you know, without a doubt, this is going to unite our craft. You know, what more could you ask for? You couldn't ask for a better thing. This was going to unite all the Masons of African American descent. Why would anybody go against adopting these resolutions, merging the two Grand Lodges, and we continue on? Everybody becomes independent. We all become one big happy family. And one of the last comments was from, even though his name was misspelled here, this is from Reverend George LaVere. LaVere was the National Grand Master. He wanted to attend the Delaware Convention, but as you see here in his comments, he didn't arrive in time to actually be able to participate. So, but he was looking forward to this National Grand Lodge Union as well. And this was, so that's showing a big sign. You have the National Grand Master himself saying that he is looking forward to these resolutions being adopted. And we have a Masonic, basically Masonic Union per se, throughout all the United States. So the resolutions happen. We're going to get into the part 2 about who all adopted them. And then you start seeing the aftermath afterwards. I don't want to get into the next portion. I believe Brother Black is going to cover that. But you see here in this letter in 1885 from Richard Gleaves to J.C. Corbin of Arkansas, Gleaves is now saying that he's on the CCLC committee for D.C., and he talks about and he's saying so far as he's heard, because now he's disassociated with himself with the National Grand Lodge. This is one of the National Grand Masters, probably one of the more influential, in my opinion, and one that caused the expansion of it. And he says that so much as I have been informed, the National Grand Lodge, as the head of the Masonic authority in the United States, has ceased to meet with Masonic authority from the fact that it has no Grand Master, but few, if any, adherents. The man that claims to be the Grand Master is not in good standing Masonically, and his Masonic conduct as National Grand Master in Tennessee has been of such a nature that it or itself would disqualify him. He's referring to George LaVere and George LaVere's actions after the 1878 Delaware Convention. Part of the National Grand Lodge Constitution states that in order to be basically National Grand Master, you have to be a part of a compact lodge. LaVere had left. LaVere had joined the Independent Grand Lodge of Tennessee. He was part of the. He was looking forward to the merger. He had left the compact. He saw it was going to die. So now there was issue. There was several men claiming to be, after 1880, claiming to be the National Grand Master. I don't want to steal Brother Black's thunder, but as you hear, when you see Gleaves state, it said, in a word, I consider the National Grand Lodge for Masonic power and influence dead. This is a past National Grand Master of the National Grand Lodge stating that the National Grand Lodge was dead. So that pretty much ends my presentation. And you see the National Grand Lodge's history is very controversial. That's why we have to go into multiple shows to cover it. As you can see, when the National Grand Lodge was faced with some type of turmoil, it did try to adjust and try to accommodate pretty much everybody, basically the independent Grand Lodges. In my opinion, it went several times trying to bring harmony and bring these independent Grand Lodges back. But in the end, they saw what was best for Masons of African American descent was that the National Grand Lodge will be dissolved. Every state will be sovereign, that there would be mergers in every state, and they would continue on with having basically a Masonic Grand Union, which would now be considered the Prince Hall Conference of Grand Masters. So now I'm going to go ahead and pass it on to Brother Black.
Thank you, Brother Gillon. Just as Brother Gillon stated, the National Grand Lodge is a very complicated subject. We've chosen to do it in 3 episodes because, and even in those 3 episodes, we still won't be able to cover everything. But our purpose is to give you an overview, an idea of what went on, based on what we have researched and based on what we're presenting to you, and the hope that you will go back and do actually your own research. Because one good brother said, we can't do your research for you. We can only show you the way. First of all, let's talk about the Masonic Convention of 1878 that was held in Delaware. Okay, and I don't I'm sorry, I don't do PowerPoint presentations. I have a little spiral notebook that that I prefer to write everything down on. I'm not as savvy as everybody else. Okay, now and Dave took some of my stuff. Thank you, Dave. For saying that, for saying a lot of stuff that I had. But let's start with
we do that. We do that around here. I thought you knew that already.
John DeVoe, who was Grandmaster Georgia at the time, was nominated as chairman, of the Delaware Convention. Now, at that time, we're going to briefly talk about quorums. In order to establish a quorum with the National Grand Lodge, meaning in order to have a convention, a legitimate legal convention, there had to be 5 or more state Grand Lodges represented. Okay, so at our 1878 convention, we have 11 Grand Lodges that are compact Grand Lodges that establish a quorum to actually have the actual convention. The first day was really a hello, how are you doing, this is the way it's going to go. It really didn't get into our meat and potatoes of the convention until the second day. And that will be when the Committee on Resolutions actually made its report. Previously to that, they were attempting to make a report on the majority and as well as a minority report, but they couldn't agree, on what should go on the report or who should read the report. So guess what? Mr. Chairman, John DeVoe, decides to go ahead and present and read off the report and submit those the resolutions to the for the committee. One major piece of those resolutions was that the Grand Lodges of the U.S. would form a union, okay, for the United States with the following restrictions. They would be there in order to settle any disputes that occur between the Grand Lodges, but not in any manner or form interfere with the internal management of a Grand Lodge. Notwithstanding, it can only advise a Grand Lodge in any matters. That changed real quick. Okay. Also, if you ever read Article 8, and what I'll do is in the Prince Hall Think Tank group, I'll actually upload this into the Prince Hall Think Tank group so everyone can see it, because like I said, I don't do PowerPoint presentations. Article 8 states that the articles were to be binding and of full force where 2/3 of the Grand Lodges of the U.S. unanimously voted the fact. Now, Article 9 says when the same shall be ratified by the requisite number of Grand Lodges, 2/3, and the secretary and presiding officer of the convention, presiding officer would be none other than John DeVoe. The the convention, those Grand Lodges of the convention would be notified immediately. Okay, and they would be initialed and announce the facts of who ratified, and who did not ratify that. Um, Section 10 says that the Grand Lodges on the NGL and the independent Grand Lodges would agree to obey the articles. Pay attention to that one. Once the National Grand Lodge, once those articles had been presented, once they had been communicated to the Grand Lodge, the National Grand Lodge was to wind up its affairs and adjourn forever, meaning that it would never meet again. Okay. I do know, Dave, that Brother Gillarm said that we'll go ahead and cover that in the next episode. You really don't want to miss that episode when we start covering those, because it's been words in the past saying that 2/3 of the Grand Lodges did not ratify that. Number one, we have to look at the Grand Lodges who were actually created at the time of the 1878 convention, not those that were created afterwards. Okay. Um, Also, now as well in the minority report that was presented, um, also it said the same thing, that all the Grand Lodges that are in the same territorial jurisdiction would unite and form one Grand Lodge, and then it be independent in its own jurisdiction. Okay, so that means it would not be under a National Grand Lodge. They were there to tend to their own affairs. Okay, now once the National Convention was done, we have another convention that was done, and that would have been taking place in 1879 in the same city, Wilmington, Delaware, 1 year later. Okay. Now from that convention, and this is actually a report that was actually taken from S.B. Carty, who was the member of the Grand Lodge of Delaware at the time. In his report, we're going to keep in mind that he didn't go. He was a loyalist, and I'm not going to say he was a loyalist to the Grand Lodge of Delaware. He was a loyalist to the continuation of African American Freemasonry and the harmony of African American Freemasonry in the United States. So he attended this meeting to really just, really just kind of get a wind of what they were saying. How could we make it work? The first thing that really kind of irked him was that he was recommended as the Grand Secretary for the session. Now, he, being a former member of the Compact, knew that that was against the National Grand Lodge Constitution. So that raised that red flag of him. Or what are we doing here? Are we just trying to put people in place, say that we have a convention, and then, spread to the world that we had this excellent time, fellowshipping with brothers and things like that, like we always see in these newspaper articles, that have been printed back there back there in that time. From my understanding, and per his report that was actually sent to our Grand Lodge, he reported that there were actually no Grand representatives from the state of Pennsylvania. Those that showed up for Pennsylvania were actually remnants of old members of a Compact Grand Lodge. He also reported that only 3 states had representatives during that convention. Now, as I told you before, it takes 5 to constitute a quorum. If you only have 3, then it doesn't take a rocket science to tell you that it's illegal. Okay. They also they didn't just say, he didn't just blurt out and say, hey, look, man, we can't do this. They actually waited around to see if there would be more representatives, and they waited around for about 2 days, but no one ever showed up. So Matthew says, hey, look, let's go ahead and do it. Nobody would ever find out. Little did he know that Carty made a report and was going to send that report out to the Grand Lodges, telling everyone what happened, and also take that back to his own Grand Lodge. After that happened, there was another one called, and this third one was called in 1880, and it was supposed to be actually in Kansas City, Missouri. Um, Isaac Carty, which was SBB Carty's father, they traveled to Missouri. On the way to Missouri, they stopped by that current Grand Master, who was the current Grand Master of Missouri, named Thomas Humphrey, and actually asked him about the meeting of, hey, look, where is this meeting supposed to be taking place? And he knew nothing of it. Okay. So, they started looking around, and they stayed there for about a week searching, trying to find out, hey, where is this meeting at? And again, they're baffled because no one is there like they're supposed to be. Okay. So what he did was they returned to Delaware. When they returned to Delaware, he made his report, and then after that, the rest was history with the state of Delaware, because they unionized and then formed another Grand Lodge. From my understanding, unless I'm reading wrong, but I don't think I am. But you have to understand, what was happening during that time. Like I said, during the early 1800s, well, after the 1880, we have Matthews, starting up, I guess, maybe his run, for National Grandmaster. Okay. What he starts doing, he starts trying to invade Texas. Okay. Past Grandmaster Abram Grant gets wind of it, forms a committee with past Grandmaster C.C. Dean, and he goes out and investigates, these rumors of Matthews, coming into Texas and, creating lodges. So we get to finding out that we have a Jacob Young, who was actually a member of the Compact Grand Lodge of Indian Territory, which is in Oklahoma, that he had been deputized by Matthews to come into Texas and put lodges into Texas, and paid these individuals $1.50 per person to join the compact. Also, you have Matthews, previous, prior to that, going into Nebraska. He goes into, Colorado, setting up lodges and things like that to try and make a stronger front for the National Grand Lodge, to control the voting, that's going on with the Grand Lodge. But and like I said before, we're gonna have to table that conversation and actually have it, get more into depth of that conversation in our next episode, because we're going to see how these Grand Lodges were, in a sense, not even created at the time that the ratification needed to happen. They were created afterwards. Okay, so that's why, we have these, we have people that say that there was never an actual 2/3 vote. Okay, that my presentation was just very short, because we weren't going to show, we were going to table a lot of stuff for the second episode. So I'll swing it back over to Brother Morgan.
Man, why do I have to come back on after you guys do all that educating? But I think that the National Grand Lodge, in a nutshell, as we see, you have different perspectives in different states, in different and at different times. One thing about here in the District of Columbia, which I think is interesting, that did not happen in most places, in fact, was that we were actually in the National Grand Lodge from our formation in 1848 up until July, I believe it was July 31st, 1871. But when we separated from the National Grand Lodge, which was kind of in between the period where most folks were involved with it, and then when you start seeing a lot of these controversies, we left in 1871, and we basically left as a Grand Lodge. And I am very hard pressed to think of after that. I don't really think we've ever really had an issue with the National Grand Lodge in terms of there being a compact Grand Lodge in DC, or members splitting off or lodges splitting off. That just doesn't seem to have happened in DC, at least not as far as I know, and as far as our written records at this time show. So I think that again, it's a horse of many colors, and it wasn't necessarily all bad, but it definitely had some cracks in it, and we see kind of where that has gone. I saw on our live chat, which, by the way, you can participate in the live chat if you're watching on YouTube, whether it's on your computer or your mobile device. You can always chime into a live chat, Facebook page, tweet us, and let us know what your questions are, because you can be a part of the conversation. We did get a question in here, I see, from Brother Eric Harrell out of Illinois. Good evening, Brother Harrell. Brother Harrell writes, he says, brothers Elston, Clark, and Hayden. I believe it's Alexander Elston, Lewis Hayden. I'm trying to remember who Clark was off the top of my head. First name escaped me. But he says here that these three brothers signed the first National Grand Lodge Constitution as delegates from Boyer Lodge of New York. Was this action legal? Brothers, anybody want to? I'll respond to that first, and I guess Dave, I'll pass on to you. From my reading of the subject, it seems to me that they had an idea that we're going to do something when we get to Massachusetts. What that something was, it doesn't really seem, that everybody, all different accounts, you get different accounts from different sources. I think when you say that they're delegates, yeah, you're a delegate, but you're supposed to come back to the body to inform us so we can make an informed decision on what we want to do with something. So whether or not we want to say whether it was legal or not, and truth be told, it goes for anybody else who was there at that convention. I think it depends on that body's reaction and their response once they find out, oh, you signed us up for this. So that's just my. But that's my perspective, and I think that's something that in your reading you should consider. What did the body do after this formation? Brother Gillard?
I'm actually I had to grab some of my material, and I'm coming out of. By the way, James, I got 2 copies of this. I got sent 2 copies.
You know what? That's okay.
When you talked about Boyer Lodge, and shout out to Ezekiel Bay, Grand Historian for the Prince Hall Grand Lodge in New York. He said the representatives of Boyer Lodge had no power to make or enact law for the jurisdiction of New York, and therefore nothing proposed was binding unless it was ratified by a convenient Grand Lodge session. So that kind of answers your question. I mean, they didn't have any power to act on behalf of the Grand Lodge of New York.
But then the question has to be asked: what jurisdiction was Boyer Lodge under at the time? When you say Grand Lodge session, what Grand Lodge were they under?
That one, that is a great question. What he says here, and I will be able to have a more detailed answer for this shortly. But he states that they had no power to act on behalf of New York. So,
and this is where I think where the issue lies. There's so many different moving mechanics to it for many years, and we have to make sure we include this piece of information. There's been a lot of propaganda on both sides of this argument. Whether you are down with the independent Grand Lodges, which today are known as PHA, or that group which is known as PHO, Prince Hall Origin, which claims descent from the National Compact. There's different sides to it. When you look at William Grimshaw's book, who was a Grand Master from my jurisdiction, he wrote a lot of stuff in his book that has since been refuted, and I'm of the opinion that he was a propagandist for the state Grand Lodges in many aspects, to include this idea that he created this thing called Boyer Grand Lodge, which has since been been shown to be a false Masonic entity that never occurred. Another thing that Grimshaw did was he also tried to state that the first Colored Grand Lodge of Maryland was started in 1845, not in 1848, which is the date that that is currently best documented. And so again, on both sides. And the thing is, I take this from one of my former professors in college. Some stories there is no good guy. Some stories ain't got a good guy, and that's just kind of how that one goes. So, Brother Black, did you have anything you want to add to that?
Yes. I mean, you just take, you can take our Grand Lodge for instance. And like I said, the National Compact, well, the National Grand Lodge, I'll call it. I think it had the best intentions in the world when it was created. Um, I do believe that the members of our Grand Lodge, when we formed our Grand Lodge, I do believe we were supportive of them still. I mean, you look into the 1876 proceedings of Alabama, when they give their report on us forming our Grand Lodge, it says in there, we observe no adherence to the National Compact, but we are sure that they will remain a faithful friend. So we did remain friends, with the compact. I mean, Matthews, is the person who's responsible for placing African American Freemasonry in the state of Texas. So we'll always, be grateful for that act. It's just the things that occurred afterwards, that really kind of makes you turn your stomach, towards, the whole National Grand Lodge and Compact. Him, coming back into into a territory that even he chartered the lodges in, and basically, putting lodges back in here that, there was no reason to do it. I mean, he did what he did, installed our officers. We paid him, and that should have been it. But he saw fit to come back into our territory, and and put lodges back in there. And even I've even discovered that there was there's a warrant out there floating around, which I don't think it's real or not. I mean, because it was signed, 6 months before we even had a call for the convention in June. So I mean, who knows what happened, back then. The only thing that we can do is just continue to research, and try and find out, find those holes the best that we can, and present that information as we find it.
Yeah, and I agree with that completely. And I see here that we have another question coming in from Brother James Morale of Sons of Buford Lodge number 36 in South Carolina. Very historic lodge, by the way, which I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Richard Gleaves had something to do with that lodge. So we see that there's some living history here. And thank Brother Morale for chiming in here. And I love your first name, by the way. He asked, were there any good books or resources other than our show? What, our show's not good enough, Brother Morale? No, I'm just playing. He said, any good books or resources that lay out the history of the compact lodge history that we could recommend? Yeah, I have two resources. One, and this is a very controversial one, I will admit, but it's one that I enjoy quite a bit. This is the National Grand Lodge and Prince Hall Freemasonry: The Untold Truth, written by Brother Alton Roundtree. This book is one that, when it came out a few years back, has sparked a lot of debate online and whatnot, with a lot of our Masonic researchers. But one thing I will always tell brothers is we gotta give the brother credit, if for nothing else. You'll get a workout in, and I give the brother credit, even though everybody doesn't necessarily agree with his conclusions in this particular book. I still say, regardless of how you feel about the National Grand Lodge and Brother Roundtree's conclusions, it's an excellent reference book on the topic. And I say, read it and judge for yourself, and look at the additional information that you're being provided with here and in other places that you may find your research, and judge for yourself whether or not you agree with that brother's conclusion, which, to sum it up, basically is that he states that the National Grand Lodge continued to operate and function, whereas there are many Masonic researchers, probably more out there than not, that disagree with him and say no, that it died and whatnot. And so read for yourself, judge for yourself. Don't take our word for it. Don't take Brother Roundtree's word for it. Judge for yourself. Another resource that I would recommend before I pass it over is actually coming in the next Phylaxis magazine. It's entitled A Worthy Adversary, which is a paper that I wrote. Very long paper, so they had to break that up. See, they even had to break that up in parts. But my paper is called A Worthy Adversary. It is a history of the most worshipful King Solomon Grand Lodge of Kansas, which was the compact Grand Lodge in Kansas that William Matthews basically started and was Grand Master of. And I'm actually giving new documentation that hasn't really been discussed or published before. I'm showing that some of the writings that have been written about that Grand Lodge by some prominent individuals, to include Brother Joseph Walks, were incorrect. And this is, again, where we have to sift through the propaganda to get to the truth. One thing that you'll find in Kansas is that for many years, people have believed that King Solomon Grand Lodge started and evolved some kind of a way into the Prince Hall Grand Lodge of Kansas that is today. That is false, and I'm showing that in my paper. These are two different Grand Lodges that have a common origin point, so to speak, but the Prince Hall Grand Lodge that exists today was created by members who had left the King Solomon Grand Lodge. So hopefully when folks read that, there's a couple other pieces of information in there. I'm not going to give everything away, but when you read it, check it out and let me know. Don't argue with me. Argue with the citations, and I hope folks enjoy it. Brother Black.
There's really, I really can't say anything else about, by the way, I'm gonna let the cat out the bag. Good paper, Brother Morgan. Good paper. You definitely had, a lot of information in there. Some of the information I really didn't even, I had no idea about. But like I said, about and man, I really hate that you just brought up King Solomon Grand Lodge, because that's the Grand Lodge that that Matthews was Grand Master of, that formed up that warranted the lodges, here in Texas. We had San Antonio 21, Mount Bonnell 22, Magnolia 23, Galveston Lodge number 24, Mount Lebanon number 25. So those are the lodges that he chartered. So like I said before, I'm never going to take that away from him. And I appreciate that effort that he had, and that vision, that he had to place, African American Freemasonry in the state of Texas, especially at a time where we were not even looked at as equal, with anyone. In the state of Texas. I'm gonna say that right there, and I'm gonna leave it at that. But as like I said, as far as the National Grand Lodge is concerned, of course, we'll get into more, of that. But it served its purpose. It did what it needed to do, and it, messed itself up when it tried to exert power on Grand Lodges, and exert and try to become a sovereign entity over Grand Lodges, and not adhere to the actual Grand Lodge's own sovereignty within their states. That's pretty much all I'm gonna speak about. Like I said, I'll wait and look at these questions. Brother Gillarm, you have anything?
Yeah, trying to get some of these questions that we have in the Prince Hall think tank group. One of the questions was from Brother Harmon Weston out of Prince Hall Grand Lodge in New York. Why was it allowed to come into existence? It being a National Grand Lodge, why was it allowed to come into existence at all?
Repeat the question.
It said, why was it being a National Grand Lodge allowed to come into existence at all?
I think it's a really, really poignant question. I think that we have to remember the generation in which these brothers were existing. And I think a lot of times folks today, we get in this vacuum of Masonic research, but we have to remember the time period of what was going on in the 1840s and before that for Black people and Black men in particular. The idea of having a very, very immature Masonic movement in Black America, and one of the first major things that happened with it after Prince Hall's death was you have a split, and we have to factor in the fact that you have First Independent African Grand Lodge, you have the African Grand Lodge up in Massachusetts, then you have Hiram Grand Lodge, Pennsylvania, and you also have some bodies that we don't talk about often enough, partially because we don't have all the information on them, but you also have Osiris Electric Grand Lodge in New York. You have Philanthropic Grand Lodge in up in New York. You have United Independent Harmony Grand Lodge, which they basically said that they were the Harmony Grand Lodge. So I mean, so there's a lot of moving parts to a very, very small movement. And the idea today that we say, well, we're Prince Hall Masons, or we're somehow unified. One of the first major events you have was the fracturing of it. And I think that John T. Hilton, for all of his best intentions, was trying to make sure that no, let's bring this thing back together. Let's get this all together. That's why, even though everybody did not answer the call, all of the different Black Masonic interests were invited to this convention to sit down and have some kind of a discussion. What was the original intent or the original, plan? People debate that, but I think that that's really the reason why. And I also think too that there was a level of, I don't want to say that the brothers weren't educated in Masonry per se, but we have to remember that the idea that we have an established organization today wasn't necessarily the case back then. You didn't have a situation where, like, later on you would get Mackey's jurisprudence, which I have always said I believe that was one of the things that also was a death knell to unity in the compact, because then you have a book that's coming from, and I have to say this, from our white Masonic counterparts, that now is telling us this is how Masonry is supposed to be practiced. And you have jurisdictions, mine included, who religiously started accepting that as being the rule book. So there's just so many different moving parts to it, that again, we can't explain everything tonight, but I think that those are two of the major things that I think need to be remembered. When you brothers want to take it?
I think it's pretty simple. What entity was there that could stop them? There was nobody around to say that you can't do this. You had African Grand Lodge, you had First Independent, then you had Hiram Grand Lodge. They were the ones that said, hey, we're doing this. And they did it. So I don't think it's more a question of why was it allowed. I don't think there was an entity out there that could have stopped them from doing this. You have anything, Brother Black?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you also have to look at the Grand Lodge states. They attempted it as well. It just didn't work for them, but who are we to say that it wouldn't work for us? And like I said before, for a time period, it worked. It served its purpose. I mean, like I said, who were the powerhouse Grand Lodges at the time? Why would you want to form a national Grand Lodge? Why would you want to have Massachusetts as your first Grand Master, that national Grand Master? When Pennsylvania, in my opinion, was actually stronger than Massachusetts at the time. So, and in some letter, I'll leave that alone. I'll say in some letters, there was somebody from Pennsylvania, and then all of a sudden the paperwork was changed to somebody else. Going back to the other brother from South Carolina that asked that question on good books to read, read The Vindication of the National Grand Lodge, by that was written by Lewis Hayden. That's actually a good read. If he wants to read some good history, good information, about the National Grand Lodge as well. Like I said, I mean, look at your powerhouses, look at the state, look at Pennsylvania, You know, that's who you want to really concentrate on. What was Pennsylvania doing? You know, with Pennsylvania, you know, charting those lodges, you know, in those different states, especially in the southern states, how did it have an effect on Massachusetts, you know, at the time?
Absolutely, absolutely, and also let's remember too that those individuals who continued with the National Grand Lodge structure have published books as well. Matthew Brock had a book who served as National Grand Master also. William Benderson. So you know, again, I tell people read everything and judge for yourself, and who you think has the most consistent story of what actually occurred. We got another question in here on on our YouTube chat here. They are jumping off tonight, boy. I tell you. We had a brother here who asked. He said, "What?" He said, would like to know. He wants to know more about Black Masonic expansion in the West. Okay, and that's coming from brother Conrad. Conrad didn't say what lodge or what jurisdiction he was under, but to answer, oh, I see here, Prince Hall Grand Lodge, California. Okay, thank you, brother. Well, I'll answer that quickly since I mentioned the paper. What you have to remember, and we mentioned this earlier, is that you get to a point where the Prince Hall Grand Lodge of Ohio starts to become a major player in Prince Hall history because they have established lodges all over the place. I mean, you talk about Georgia, you're talking Alabama, Louisiana, you're talking out in Indiana as well, Missouri, you know, that was a big thing at the time, Illinois, all under one jurisdiction. And this is the same time period where you start seeing issues with the compact. I'm sorry, Brother Gillam, I'm sorry.
Ohio did not charter a lodge in Georgia.
Oh, I'm sorry,
we did have members that were made in Ohio that came back to Georgia that helped start a lodge. So while Ohio didn't directly charter a lodge, they did. It were members of Ohio that came into Georgia and then started a lodge in Columbus.
50 lashes for this guy right here. My apologies. But my point is that you have lodges and jurisdictions even all over the place. The fact that even, I mean, I can make that mistake, make an honest mistake like that because you had so many guys from Ohio jurisdiction going to Georgia. I mean, that in and of itself. What happens is, and I talk about this in the paper, is that you have the Prince Hall Grand Lodge of Indiana, or what now is the Prince Hall. See, again, we have to remember these names are modern concepts. But what is now the Prince Hall Grand Lodge of Indiana gave birth to the King Solomon Grand Lodge of Kansas. And King Solomon Grand Lodge of Kansas actually claimed territory over Colorado, Nebraska, Wyoming, Texas, Indian Territory, which is now getting into Oklahoma, Arkansas region. And then they also expanded into I'm finding now into New Mexico and Arizona also. And probably other regions as well that I may not have found yet. I think that in writing the paper, and hopefully when folks read it, and Brother Conrad, I hope you get the chance to check it out. I think people will get a new understanding of Prince Hall Masonry in the West, and remembering that was the Wild West at that time. I hope folks will get a different perspective of it because, for example, many Prince Hall Grand Lodges today, if you look at their histories, you will find, much like Texas, for example, all of Texas lodges came from King Solomon, which was a compact Grand Lodge. You have many Prince Hall Grand Lodges today that they had one or two lodges at their formation that were from a compact Grand Lodge. A lot of times, if they're out west, probably from King Solomon Grand Lodge of Kansas. And that history has not been very well documented. Okay. And so again, we have holes in our history sometimes that I have found where I have found even now where I'm like, oh my God, there are Prince Hall Grand Lodges today that are operating with wrong creation dates because of some jerry-rigging of the records, jerry-rigging of the history. Okay, a lot of that does fall at the feet of people like a William Grimshaw or Richard Howell Gleaves, but it wasn't just them, as Brother Gillam pointed out earlier. So again, just because something's on a Grand Lodge website, just because we say it on the Prince Hall think tank, don't necessarily take it as the gospel. And I even go further and say, just because it's written in proceedings, don't necessarily take it as the gospel. Compare and contrast. Read what everybody said and judge for yourself what you think to be the truth. And guys, you guys want to chime in on that?
Yeah. Well, I think we do have.
I'm sorry, Brother Gillen, repeat that. You break up really bad again.
I'm trying to get through these notes. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
That way, I know because the hour is getting very short. I believe this is directed towards Brother Black, and this is Brother James Scott out of the great country of Texas. He said he would like to know why did San Antonio receive a charter first instead of Mount Bono in Austin when Texas left the compact and formed the Grand Lodge.
Well, let's let's kind of and I do believe not to I love my brother. I think I actually answered that at Grand Session last week, but that's a very good question because in the proceedings it says specifically that the lodges who were at the convention were the ones that were going to actually receive the charters, and per our proceedings, San Antonio was not there. Now, did they make an alternative decision to issue that charter to them, because they are the first lodge that was chartered by King Solomon Grand Lodge. They are the #1 lodge. You also have to look at the the area. If you at the time you're talking about 1875, we didn't have planes, trains. We didn't have planes and automobiles then. I mean, we're working with on horseback. You figure San Antonio to Brenham. Brenham is a lot closer to Austin. You know what I mean? So, and Brenham is more of a centralized location, as far as the Houston area, and Austin is concerned. San Antonio kind of sits on the outskirts, on the edge down there. As like I said, as far as the proceedings are concerned, in my honest opinion, they shouldn't have received one, but for some strange reason they did. And one other thing, since he mentions Mount Bonnell, Mount Bonnell is it boasts to be the longest continuously operating lodge, in Prince Hall history, in Prince Hall Grand Lodge, Texas history. One major fact is because it's always sent in a report when it's Grand Session time. That's all I'm gonna say about that. I hope I answered the question for you, Brother Scott. But like I said, we don't really know why they received their charter. The only thing I can tell you is that they are the first lodge that was chartered, under King Solomon Grand Lodge here in Texas. So rightfully, they should receive that charter.
All right. The other part I'd like to address of that, I know Brother Black, you probably don't want to do it. You ain't got to worry about it. I got it covered.
Okay.
When it said Texas left the compact and formed a Grand Lodge, Texas was never compact at all. There were lodges that were part of King Solomon Grand Lodge, but Texas itself, the Grand Lodge, was never a compact Grand Lodge at all at any point in time. I was trying to make that clear. You go back and read the proceedings, you will clearly see that Texas never accepted award from the National Grand Lodge. There may have been some intent to give Texas one, but basically, for lack of a better term, on my turn, Texas said, "Nah, we cool on all that."
Yeah, there might have been some pre-signings or something like that, but when it all came down to it, Grandmaster Cunin was like, "No, I don't think so. We don't think so." But I don't think that Brother Scott was saying that Texas itself was. The lodges were. There's no doubt about that, because King Solomon Grand Lodge was a compact Grand Lodge. you know, at the time that it chartered our lodges, but we never formed a compact Grand Lodge. I do believe that we did remain friends, you know, with Matthews up until, you know, the 1878 convention, and then after that, when he attempted to invade our jurisdiction again.
And let's remember too, and brother Black, you and I have had several discussions about this very topic, that, you know, again, alliances change. You know, especially when you start talking about I don't like you to use the word war and Freemason, the same thing, but alliances change, and I think I'm of the opinion that that's probably what happened with Texas too. That I think Texas, when they first got started, they were going to go into the compact, and then something happened. We don't necessarily know what happened, but I believe that something did happen to make Texas and Grandmaster CUNY say, "Wait a second, Wait a second." So again, you know, it's a horse of many colors.
Let me you know, not to interrupt you, brother.
No problem. I was done. Go ahead.
One of the things that actually happened is that you know, Texas started actually being pressured by the Grand Lodges to publicly make a statement of who it supported. Either it was going to be independent or it was going to be with the compact. And you can actually see those in Illinois proceeding, their 1877 proceeding. You can see them in 1876 proceeding. So I'm not saying that they succumbed to that pressure, you know, but they did go ahead and say, hey, look, you know, this is probably the best thing for us. And you got to realize, CUNY as a politician, Richard Allen as a politician, these gentlemen traveled. Okay, so they interacted with these different Grand Lodges. So I'm sure that they saw what was going on, you know, and saw the independence that was going on, you know, with those Grand Lodges. You know, so that might have given them an idea like, hey, look, man, you know, we don't want to be governed by anybody. We're the great country of Texas. We can govern ourselves, as we always have.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, I see here that I'm sorry. Go ahead.
And that pressure, it did extend and affect Georgia. And you can see there's some grand communications around 1885. And you see the correspondence between William Terry of Georgia and J.C. Corbin of Arkansas. And of course, you if you get a chance to read William Boyd's some of his writings, he basically you say you don't want to hear about war and masonry, but it's like he waged an all-out war against Georgia and said and tell everybody, hey, don't fool with them cats down there, man. You don't know what they doing. Right. So in that exchange, they were asking Georgia to make a public declaration of independence, and as of July 25th, 2017, it still hasn't happened. And Toomer laid this out in 1885 when Terry came to him, was like, hey man, you know, these guys saying we gotta make this declaration of independence. And Toomer was like, okay, slow down, young buck. We ain't about to do none of that. In our Constitution in 1870, we clearly stated that we were sovereign. So we don't have to make a declaration of independence claiming our sovereignty. We've been sovereign since 1870. They only viewed themselves as being in union with the National Grand Lodge, not subordinate to it. So
exactly.
So, and that's why, as of today, you still have not had that Declaration of Independence. They said we simply just didn't need to do it. This caused issues for years because you had so many Grand Lodges, including Arkansas, which you saw in my presentation. When that message to Terry, Corbin said, you know, we need to see something, man. And eventually, once the merger between 1870 Grand Lodge and 1874 Grand Lodge happened, everybody started to get back in amity with Georgia. But that pressure to make basically state whose side you on was definitely there. Between Ohio, Arkansas, Texas, man, they was trying to lay that pressure on. They wanted everybody. They wanted to know who you were with. But go ahead, Brother James.
Oh no, I was gonna say something else, but I might as well at least speak for DC. DC was in the National Grand Lodge very, very early. We were in the compact basically at our formation, which was before a lot of these other Grand Lodges even existed, right? You know, in the pre-Civil War period. We actually and I've actually gone through our original handwritten minutes to try to find things with the National Grand Lodge. One thing that I think was an issue is that it really, just like kind of like the Conference of Grand Masters today, I don't think it really affected the day-to-day members, the regular working brothers. It was really more so Grand Lodge officers and Grand Masters and whatnot that were starting to have these issues. One of the first references you find to the compact after our formation, and I was very surprised I didn't see much about the compact in our minutes, even though we were a member of it. You start seeing when they start having one of the national triennial sessions. I believe it was in the 1865 one. We got an invitation, but with the caveat that we actually owed them money. And that's when you start seeing the membership going, wait, we owe who money? Why do we owe them money? Who are they? You know, and that was that you start seeing that issue. By 1868, we actually had a resolution that we were to leave the National Grand Lodge and actually to utilize our delegates to it to put pressure to dissolve it. But what I've seen is that you actually have a generation gap. The older members were like, hey, wait. Okay, there's problems, but let's figure it out. Let's fix it first. And the younger generation is more like, nah, we don't want to hear it. Grandmaster John F. Cook, who was serving at that time, he actually is the one who took us out of the National Grand Lodge in 1871. And if you pick up Brother Roundtree's book, there actually is a letter in there with his statement of his stance on that. In so many words, he said, well, our Grand Lodge voluntarily joined the National Grand Lodge, and now we're voluntarily leaving the National Grand Lodge. So again, you know, it's definitely a horse of many colors. Looking at the hour here, I see time is getting short, and I know we've got a bunch, and this is actually probably a first for us, where I don't think we're going to get to every question tonight, guys, because I mean we've got so many coming in on the YouTube chat here. I see Brother Eric Carell is asking us, or he's asking you two specifically, your opinions on Joshua Woodland. We got another question coming in here where someone's asking us about why did Texas have Matthews install their officers. I got another question here about the difference between sovereignty under the compact and not. I mean, we got so many questions flooding us, guys. I don't know if we're gonna get to them all tonight. Yeah, I got at least 3 or 4 questions on YouTube alone. Man,
well,
we really
let me.
Well, is it possible? The questions that are coming in YouTube to like copy, paste them, and then paste them into the think tank group, so at least that we can address them there. Because I believe once we end the show, we won't be able to address anything in the live chat.
That's perfectly fine. I can do that, sir. And I want to apologize to our viewers whose questions we're not going to be able to get to tonight. Please don't take it personal from us. It's just blame the clock and the fact that we all have to get up. I know I got to get up and go to work tomorrow, but we are so excited, and we definitely hope that you all will come back for parts 2 and part 3 of this discussion, because it's again, you see it's so many different moving parts to it. Let's see here. Are we going to move into closing comments now, guys, or?
Yeah.
All right. Brother Gillen?
Definitely want to thank everybody for tuning in tonight's show. This was a very controversial topic. We knew as we were trying to find the right time to address it. And then once we started getting into it, we saw that we had to break it down in at least 3 segments. As it's just so much to talk about when it comes to National Grand Lodge, as you can see on tonight. If you could, feel free to keep throwing in your questions. We're going to keep knocking those out as much as we can. And on the second show, we're going to get into more of that 1878 to 1888 time frame and some of the stuff that happened afterwards. So tentatively, we're looking at having this next show within the next week or 2. We will make the official announcement probably within the next 24 to 48 hours. In addition to that, we will be having our on show next month, additional show next month involving Brother Lawrence Henry, where we talk about his book, The Jewel, and it goes into lectures about the shrine. Since we have Imperial Session coming up in August, it'll be a great idea if you don't get it now to go ahead and pick up this book at Imperial Session. I'm pretty sure it's going to be available for purchase there. It's an outstanding book. He is Brother Henry is very knowledgeable when it comes to shrine, so definitely pick up that book. I'm pretty sure you viewers are gonna hit him up and shoot him your questions, pick his brain. I had a great conversation with him. This is an outstanding, amazing brother. And he is definitely doing some great things. So feel free to tune into that show. We're gonna have throughout the rest of the year. We're gonna have some more interesting shows for you. Brother Ken Collins, as of right now, he may not return to the video portion of the Prince Hall think tank. While it may sadden quite a few viewers, and you won't hear Sweet Home Alabama anymore, Brother Collins is going to fulfill the next role or the other aspect of the Prince Hall think tank, where we start going into the educational department. He's handling the incorporations for that, where you will be able to purchase books and so many other materials to advance your knowledge. So while he's moving away from the video portion, he's picking up in the educational department. So you will have more research tools available to you. As far as who will be replacing him, as of right now, we don't have anybody in mind in particular, but we have in hopes of having somebody return, and that will fill up the fourth slot. The show seems to flow a lot better when we have 4 people. But otherwise, I really don't have anything else. We are in baseball season, so continue to cheer for your St. Louis Cardinals. And continue to, it's Sunday, so I hope you put the Knicks in your prayers. I don't know what Phil Jackson has going on. I think he's just trying to take us back to like Candyland or something. I don't know what he's doing with us right now. But continue to pray for the Knicks and continue to cheer for the St. Louis Cardinals.
You know what? Why is it that when Brother Gillon is on here talking about some stuff about Masonic history and education and stuff we really want to hear, he drops out, he gets bad audio. When he starts talking this nonsense about these crazy sports teams, we can hear him loud and clear. I don't understand. But Brother Black, make sense of this for me, please.
Man, I can't make any sense of it. I mean, every time he brings up the Cardinals, I just like, oh man, here we go. And the Knicks. Oh my God.
Right now I'm in Yakima, Washington. Train these soldiers. Oh, hold on.
I need any Prince Hall Mason. I need any Prince Hall Mason in Yakima, Washington to find Brother Gillum and check his dues card.
It's like, these hit the road with me wherever I go. I gotta have my Knicks paraphernalia. I gotta have my Cardinals paraphernalia. So I take this all around the world with me. So everywhere you see me at next month, I'll be in Barstow, California. You will see these 2 items with me.
So that's why you can't get a date. Got it. Oh, got it. But anyway, thank you all for tuning in. And I just want to give a shout out to our viewers, man, because y'all are so loyal to us, man. Y'all could have been watching Power, but y'all was here with us, and we appreciate that. We really, really do. Again, we're going to get into this topic. You guys are going to get so much of the Prince Hall think tank is going to make you sick this coming summer, but we're going to keep it moving. I definitely want to give a shout out to my home state of New Jersey, where I was born and raised. I went to their annual session. Congratulations to now past Grandmaster Shelton Prescott, who was a guest on the show on a previous episode, and to their new Grandmaster, and actually the first Muslim Grandmaster in that state, Most Worshipful Grandmaster Tyson Rasul Dawood. Congratulations, my brother, and I want to thank the jurisdiction of New Jersey for blessing me with an honorary membership in the Prince Hall Grand Lodge of New Jersey. That meant so much to me, man. Just for that being my home state. Thank y'all so much for all the love. We got so much love, guys, for the Prince Hall think tank in Jersey and from different jurisdictions around the world. I ran into grandmasters from New York and Massachusetts, and everybody's asking us about the think tank. And as a matter of fact, Grandmaster Prescott, we're actually in the minutes because he shouted out the Prince Hall think tank on the floor of the Grand Lodge session. So you know, that just warmed my heart, man. And thank everybody out there for supporting us. With that being said, we will see you guys on the next special episode and next month. Signing off. Brother Black.
You know, just as you said, I just want to thank everybody for you know, for tuning into our show today, being faithful, you know, watchers of the show, listeners and things like that. I also you know, I always want to give, you know, thanks to my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ for, you know, for waking me up every day and allowing me to you know, take care of my family the best way that I can, and to fellowship with this stellar group of brothers that we have on this panel, the ones that have already, you know, that have gone, and the ones that will actually be here in the future. You know, shout out to the most worshipful Prince Hall Grand Lodge of Texas, free and accepted Masons. You know, shout out to my most worshipful Grandmaster, you know, Wilbur M. Curtis, for supporting me, you know, and allowing me to be a part of this show, because I did ask him for his blessing. You know, shout out to District 15A. That's you know, that has my heart. You know, I hope you all are able to tune into our next episode. We look forward to giving it. We look forward for you to you taking something away from it that you can use in your everyday life. That's all I have to say.
Sounds good to me. Well, we took off, and even though we are still in the air on this topic, we're gonna land it for tonight and move forward. We thank you all so much. Please pray for our sick and shut in as well, including anybody with a Knicks or Cardinals necklace around their neck. Please. By the way, did y'all see the draft? By the way, but we'll get into that later because you know, yeah. Anyway, y'all have a good night and Godspeed. Happy 300 to organized Freemasonry around the world.
And go Cowboys.
See, there you go. See, I was trying to end on a good note. On a good note, man. Giants all day. You remember what happened in the 2 games, right? You remember that, right? All right. Signing off, y'all. Brother Morgan got the last word. Peace.